I lost my job. I was sacked on the grounds of incapability, which is not anything you want to have on your CV. So just emotionally, just the repercussions of all that sort of thing, and living in a society where somebody says, you meet somebody for the first time, and they say to you, "Oh, what do you do?" And for a long time, the answer was nothing, and so that de-skills you and it disempowers you. And actually, I didn't do nothing, but I didn't do anything that could be easily explained in a social context.
So, how would you start?
I'd like to begin.
Okay, shall I just start to ask you some
I
questions?
think you should start to ask me some questions, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you could tell me a little bit about why we're sitting on your bed.
Why we're here. We're here because this is one of my favourite places that you quite often find me in my bed of an afternoon, because I have a medical condition called ME, so myalgic encephalomyelitis, I think. And it's also known as chronic fatigue syndrome, but I don't like that definition of it, because there's far more things go on than just fatigue. But yeah, the work that I'm doing at the moment is called Props for an Imagined Life, and it talks about what happens when you think your life is going in one direction and then something happens and sets you off course. And in my case, I had chickenpox and became very ill, and as things transpired, never got any better. And that meant that the life that I thought I was going to live wasn't available to me, and a different one happened instead. And at that point, I had about 12 years of being very, very ill and not doing much at all. And over the years, I've got better, but nowhere near like a healthy person. When I describe it, actually, I would say I have about a third of the ability of a healthy person. So when I'm trying to work out how much work to do, that's how I measure things. But the point of the work is to talk about the life that I thought I was going to have, and how you deal with the emotions and the fallout from that, how you kind of let that go but acknowledge that it was there. And then there's another side to the work which has a much more hands-on, accessible side to it, which represents the life that I actually have. So the life I imagined is in 6 big portraits of me, but taken by other photographers. And then the life that I have now is represented by a comfortable living area, because I spend a lot of time in my living room. And there are lots and lots of things for people to try out or get their hands on, because the things that I do, that I've learned to do over the years to keep me sane and keep me feeling productive and part of the world, are kind of there's lots of craft, there's lots of knitting and sewing and spinning, and I do a lot of documenting the life that I have used to be just with a camera, but now phones makes life a lot easier. I do a lot of taking images of things that I make, and just the stuff that catches my eye in my small environment, and so that's represented as well. Johanna sitting all over you. Hello. Hello. Come in and get your hands on some things. The hope is that people will spend time in there, look at the images, get their hands on stuff, and that it's a space where people can talk and share experiences about what happens when your life is derailed. Because in my case it's disability, but in many other cases I can think of 100 different reasons that life doesn't go the way that you think it is. Yeah, that's the end of that sentence.
That was fantastic.
So, as well as the big pictures and the space in the living room for people to talk, I created some postcards from phrases that keep coming back in my head, and if a phrase sticks in my head, it means I've got to think about it. It's kind of asking me to pay attention. The idea is hopefully that people will take them away and use them, and if you're somebody who has a disability, you can use them to start a conversation about why something's difficult. And if you want to understand what it's like, you can use them to say, tell me about this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody knows what it's like when things are a bit much, but if you have ME or other kind of neurodivergent things, sensory overload is massive. So supermarkets, busy places, noisy places are all a bit much. But even good things like parties, even though you want to be there, they can be a bit much. This is one that I'm afraid I use quite a lot as an example, because you find yourself having to cancel stuff, or I'd love to help, but actually I can't do it. There's all that sort of thing. And so friendships are quite hard to maintain because you can't do the work of maintaining them. And you need, I'm lucky to have good friends, but you need to have friends who understand that you're going to be unreliable. And and I'm also going to forget to turn up quite often. I'm terrible with organising things. But just like everybody else, I'm doing the best that I can. But that can sometimes sound like a plea, but it's also quite a nice reminder. It's like, no, actually, I am doing the best that I can. This is okay. And so I like that's a kind of a nice double-edged one. But it's very popular. People are taking that one home. And then there is this one. There's so many things I'd love to do, and I don't do them because I can't. And that's quite a difficult thing to explain, because sometimes when I feel well, I do something, and then somebody will assume that I can do the same thing the next weekend, and I can't, because I need a lot of recovery time. But I do hate missing out on things. And the next one on that is also, we don't talk a lot about envy. Envy's a really kind of unpleasant emotion. Really envy healthy people. And when healthy people tell me they're tired, I'm really? And I'm sure you are, but quite often healthy people are tired because they've done a lot. And I'm tired because I woke up. So there's that was a big one for me. And I think I might get it on a t-shirt. And then the last one is strangely one that I've noticed is resonating with people in the gallery. I didn't expect it to, but that sense of, oh, it's really nice to see you, but please go home. I've used all my sociable energy, and and my sociable energy runs out quite quickly. So please go home. And I rarely have a visitor when that doesn't happen. And that's, but so many other people obviously have the same feeling, but we don't talk about it. So that's been really interesting, is this one. But I love postcards. I think postcards are a really, really democratic way of sharing art, because most of the time you can afford a postcard, you can't afford a Van Gogh. So I'm really glad that people are taking them home. Yeah, I guess with the living room space, that's a kind of a strange mixture, because some of that is about gathering people together, but actually most of the time in my own living room, it's myself and my partner and the cat. So it's not a place that's filled with people, but in an ideal world it would be. There would be lots more activity going on, and it's also a very quiet place generally, because I don't do well if there's too much noise or too much light and too much stimulation, which is really annoying. So the imagined life is full of colour, and although there's nobody else in the room, there's always somebody in my head in the background. So although they're self-portraits, in my kind of imagined world, that I would be surrounded by people. There would be lots of other folk around there.
Oh, yeah. It's really nice. I know. Yeah, I love the
thank you so much.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, hang around as well.
I asked the photographers to work as if they were doing a magazine cover. So there's Photoshop. My skin looks amazing. They are all very, very glossy, kind of unapproachable, untouchable. They're bigger than life, and working with Leo, the stylist, who's a drag artist, he did the transformation that makes me larger than life and absolutely fantastic. The makeup is wonderful. There wasn't really a space to have little labels, and I didn't want just the standard relabel thing. So what we've got instead are 6 A4 frames on the wall opposite the banners. So you can look at the frames and then look at the banners. And each one has a statement that matches one of the banners, but they're not in the right order. So you've got to look at them and work out which one's which. I tried very hard to work within the limits of my illness when I was doing this, which is easier said than done. But we tried to organise things. So, but by this time, in process terms, there was myself, Louise and Kyle, photographers, and Leo as the stylist and makeup. So we agreed that we'd only work half days, and we would try and work within a small kind of geographical area, so we weren't not costing a lot for transport, but also just not travelling for ages. The project in the end involved 6 different scenarios of what I thought I might have done. It's not necessarily who I would have become, but just as I thought very quickly about it, just to get my kind of initial responses. Things I might have been had I not been unwell. So one of them was a gym, because before I became ill, I was the fittest I'd ever been, and I just loved that feeling of strength. And that, just the enjoyment of having a body that you could trust. So there's a gym, there's a party, children's party, because I don't have children. I have family, but I don't have biological children. And that was a thing that we didn't pursue as much as we might have done had I been healthier. Because there was always the risk that I would become either more unwell, or it's really hard work having kids. So there's a lovely image of me as if I'd had was at a children's party, as if I had children. There's one of me being very sociable in a beautiful room, imagining that I'm a great hostess, because one of the things you lose is the capacity to hang around with lots of people and chat and enjoy that, and to just even just make, like, I don't do dinner parties or make many meals for people, because by the time I've made the dinner I'm knackered. There's no time for speaking. What's the one that's left? There's singing. I always wanted to be in a band, and that was probably never going to come true, but that's still, it's a thing. I wanted something that was just a bit daft as well, that was not necessarily going to be a sensible thing.
I've written a letter to Daddy saying... He's cut me off in the train.
The only way I could look like I was singing was to sing. You can't pretend. And in the end I spent, I think, 2 hours singing one song, and then the image that we used was from the last maybe 15 minutes of the shoot. And we realised that the only way to make my face do a really big thing was to sing a really big tune. So I'm actually singing Shout by Lulu, the whale, because that makes your face grow massive.
Yeah.
Nature girl, I think, is genuinely who I wanted to be. I wanted to live on a farm, and me waking up in the morning it was kind of dewy. There's a lot of dewy, kind of sparkly bits on the makeup, and it was me sitting in the morning air, just having a lovely time. The last one is, I was on a really sensible career path, and everything was going very well in that, and I could have reasonably looked forward to rising up through the ranks of a career and financial independence and security. So there's a wonderful shot of me looking like which I would never have been like a corporate person, but I just wanted that kind of slightly over the top sense of, I think working girl was the inspiration for that, but just really kind of chic office person. I'd said right from the beginning that I'm going to have to mess around with this, because I can't just go in cold. I don't have the skills for that. But something about the change, taking my glasses off, putting on a wig, and Leo's ability to to change my face with makeup and false eyelashes and the wig and all that kind of stuff. I didn't become a different person, but I became a much more performative version of me. I knew quite early on that I wanted to work with somebody from the drag community, and part of that is I've always been curious about my own gender identity and all the things that go around with that, but also I didn't want just real life. This was my imagination. This was my dream world where you can try things out and you can experiment and you can try on different personas, and that really struck a chord with me, because what I'm doing isn't drag. It's very definitely not drag. And Leo, he and I have agreed that he's drag adjacent. He's not making me up as a drag queen as I would be, but he's adding the drag qualities, extra gloss, extra imagination, extra fabulousness.
I don't think that Jeni would wear a hot pink blush.
Oh!
Look at that. It's just, there's just so much work into even just an everyday persona, even just being representing yourself in everyday clothing. That takes an effort. And I notice when I'm not well, because that doesn't happen, and I just do duvets, or it's pajamas and then a jumper, and then I find out that I've worn pajamas all day, and then I have to take off the day pajamas and wear night pajamas, and that can go on for a while.
I know that when you're performing or doing any kind of photography, when it comes to makeup, you always want to make it look 10 times more exaggerated than what you would normally go for.
Oh, offensively bright. That's good. But false eyelashes are a game changer.
Very much so.
Into boxes.
If you could open your eyes for me.
Wow! I also have eyes that fit the false eyelashes.
Yeah,
I realised that really
well.
quickly. But now it feels like I've got butterflies on my face.
Indeed. All right, I think that we're pretty.
Are we done?
Tuck it back in the back. And I'll just real quick.
This is the hardest bit, I think, actually, because the wigs are already. I feel my head going backwards.
You have to
The
hold
wigs are
yourself
really
totally
heavy.
differently. You can see the wigs slipping back slowly but surely. There we go.
But it is interesting because I do feel that I could do a routine. I wouldn't do this as me. But you have a sense that you've got your armour on, which is kind of nice. You're kind of performing armour. But I won't do anything too fancy because these heels.
That experience of being in costume made what I was doing seem real, which is great, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Doing something imaginary made it feel real. But definitely that stepping out of yourself feeling was something that I'd never done before, and that was really fascinating. There's a new phrase in my head. It's no longer props for an imagined life, and I have a new phrase kind of bubbling, and it's be a domestic explorer, and that's I don't know what it is yet, but it's written down on a piece of paper over there, and that's the beginning of something, and I don't know what that's going to turn into, but I think that's the next bit.